Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining me today for Medium PR for Small Business. My name is Kristy Bailey. I am a presenter and advisor for Business Station as part of the ASBAS program. I also run a marketing business, 180 Marketing. So a lot of what we go through today is going to be what I implement on a day-to-day basis for the clients that I work with. So we like it to be as interactive as possible. If you have any questions at any time, if you can use the Q&A functionality through Zoom to ask those questions, and I'll get to them as I see them come through, but also at the end, we'll have some opportunity for a bit of a discussion as well through that Q&A functionality. So feel free to use that and we'll get started. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at the importance of PR for small business. We'll look at defining media and PR and what each of the terms actually means. We'll look at building media relations, generating publicity for your business, and as a small business, perhaps a small business owner, how you can do that. We'll also take a bit of a dive into working with influencers and whether or not that would be suitable for your business and what kind of things to be aware of should you want to work with influencers. We'll also look at the customer journey and where media and PR fits into that, and then have a look at your social media and PR strategy. So media, what is it? Well, essentially, media is a mass means of communication. So information is delivered to the public through things like newspapers, through magazines, through television, radio, and of course, a range of ways online. So when you think of the term media, you think traditional media generally and news outlets, but that's really not the case anymore. Media is so much more, and there are just an unbelievable number of media outlets that each individual will experience on a daily basis. So there's social media, there's influential bloggers, YouTube influencers, there's online publications, there's podcasts. All of those things can be harnessed to really help publicize your business. So in a traditional sense, journalists and reporters were the people who write or present the news and then feature stories, I should say, and editors then control that content. But what we know about media these days is that editors don't control the final content. Everyone really does control the content, including your customers. So just to have a look at that in a bit more detail, what you see on your screen now is the PESO model. So it's a media model strategy, essentially. So PESO is an acronym that stands for paid, earned, shared, and owned. So it's really important to understand that what you're doing in PR, media, or in marketing really should fit into this model. And you have to use a variety of different strategies across a number of different mediums. In the past, paid media was the primary focus of advertising, and then earned media was the primary focus of PR. Shared and owned wasn't really anyone's focus, but today there's so much crossover that each of these elements that you see has to be a key focus in your business. So just to expand on them a little bit more, paid is your advertising. So it's advertising, it could be advertorials, where you've got some editorial content that is essentially paid. So you've got advertising within that. It could be sponsorship or sponsored content even, which is content that you pay for. It could include ads on the radio, TV, it could be print, as well as any other paid advertising. So paid media also includes online ads. So it could be pay-per-click through the Google AdWords platform. It could be social media advertising for Facebook, for Instagram, those sponsored posts, banner ads, anything that you pay for. Your earned media is your news coverage. So earned media is when you've earned the opportunity, so often through having really good media relations, which we'll talk a lot about today, to appear in a news story or in a news outlet. So media will be the specific publication, as press coverage, but it will then also include backlinks to your website. It could include reviews. This could be industry specific. It could be in the form of awards that you've won perhaps, and the media coverage that is associated with that. Because of the association with viral content, that earned media has the potential to reach many more customers than your paid or your owned media. So keep that in mind. And like I said, we will talk today about developing those media relations. So then in the shared space, essentially shared is social media or it's user-generated content. So it's not created by you as such, it's created by your people or the public, and it's constantly evolving. So what happens here is really largely as a result of your marketing and your customer service. So you can't really afford any negative relations with your customers at any stage of their purchase cycle, of their journey with you, because this is where it comes out in that shared media space. So owned media, these are your owned assets, such as your website. So when you think about this, basically, if you fully control the content and its distribution, so if you can add to it, if you can edit it, if you can delete the content, then you probably own it. So owned media is the content that you've created, and anything that you have full control over. So I mentioned your website, it could also be your blog, it could be ebooks that you've written, white papers, presentations, anything like that. So keep in mind that each of these categories is a lot more effective when it's used in conjunction with each other rather than in isolation. So we'll come back to this peso model, but it's really important to keep that in mind and to ensure that you're doing everything that you can in each aspect of this model, the peso model, to get full reach. All right, so then looking at PR, public relations is a strategic communication process, essentially, and it really aims to build mutually beneficial relationships between organisations and the public, so your company and the public. So in very simplified terms, I think that PR is having a good strategy plus good storytelling. So as a small business, you might not think that you're in the business or in need of public relations, but you absolutely are. So if you think back to that model, and this is your earned and your shared component, if you're not in that space, you're not really covering all aspects of media. So public relations is absolutely crucial to the success of every business, no matter how big or small. The main difference is that for a budget-conscious business, you probably don't have the luxury of hiring a high-priced PR company to run this aspect of your media for you. So you have to take a more DIY approach and really master your own public relations. So that's the purpose of today's webinar, is to essentially give you the confidence to be able to do that. All right, so just having a look at this one, the then versus now, is really interesting to look at how the media space has evolved. So previously, brands controlled messages, whereas now everyone controls the message. Your customers are fully empowered. So publicists previously were spin doctors, and then the media relations that they had, or those relationships that a PR or a publicist had with the media, were the absolute gold. But now, like I said, the customers are empowered, and we don't just believe what a publicist tells us or what the media tells us. Everyone has their say. And that just sort of goes back to previously, customers were just passive receptors. So, however, now there are so many different simultaneous communications going on. So traditional media and news articles that you read are just one outlet. So generating positive media or coverage or publicity is really a core function of PR professionals. It's only just one of many core functions though. So the title publicist doesn't really say anything about the research, the strategy, the messaging, and all those other activities that go into a really successful public relations program. So the word publicist is I believe it's an old word. Publicist in that process is just to produce a transaction, a specific outcome, like an article or media coverage on a television show. To be a PR pro, you have to build relationships that give you positive results across all forms of media. So hopefully that makes sense. But the key message here is that customers are empowered more than ever before. So we need to really take advantage of that. All right, so to get publicity, you have to have good media relations, and you have to take time to build those media relations. So building relationships with the media is so important for you, because journalists really like dealing with people that can assist them in their job, make their job easier, essentially. So today the media is so fast-paced that they really just don't have time to sit, find stories, research those stories, and then publish them. So if you can provide them with a really easy story, then it's going to be a win for you and a win for them, of course. So it's really important that you develop an understanding of the difference between news and feature journalists, for example, and then you've got consumer or trade journalists. So think about who the journalist or the publication is speaking to. Trade partners, so your industry partners, or is it talking to the end consumer? So they're always going to be looking for stories that appeal to their specific audience. A news editor will look for really straightforward news stories, so new information about something that has, or even better, that will happen, whereas a feature editor will be more interested in an in-depth story that's topic specific. So they will write features such as travel, the travel features that are in the travel section of the newspaper, or the health and wellness features that are in, in various publications. So consumer media will look for stories that appeal directly to the public, whilst your trade media will be interested in material that's specific to the trade that will be picking up their publication, whether that's printed or online. So to build really good media relations, it's important for you to build a news sense as a first step. So you have to know what info each outlet presents, and what type of items may be of interest to them. So you have to determine who their audience or listeners are, who it is that they're speaking to. So you can do that by looking at their articles to really look at what they like to write about. And also have a look at what sort of stories they're pitching, and you can get a really quick idea of who their audience may be. You also have to know lead times. So knowing the lead times and the deadlines for the media that you're targeting is really important. So for example, news items for print, radio and TV have really short lead times. So they can appear really quickly on the news or television or even radio that day or the next day. So then you've got feature articles, as I mentioned before, and they're planned well in advance, sometimes up to 6 months in advance, where they're laying out these features and obtaining all of the relevant information. You also have to know specific people. So if you can do your research to really get the names of the journalists and their contact details, so find out how they best like to receive media releases or information and keep that list up to date. Now, this can be a bit of a difficult task because you're trying to get to that real person that sits behind the face of a company. So you can use tools like LinkedIn to start building relationships and start getting to know people and get to know who are in the specific roles. You can contact them, whether that be by email or have a look at, even if you're looking at printed publications, for example, quite often inside the front cover, they'll clearly state who their editor is and who their feature contacts are. So even going through those channels to build your own database, do your research, and then trying to reach out through things like LinkedIn or perhaps on social media, whether that be Twitter or Facebook or however you like to interact. So getting those and knowing those specific people is really important. When you do have the contacts, to be accurate when you're providing information is absolutely crucial, and to be on time as well. So if you know the deadlines, you know who you're speaking to, you've got the information, provide it in a very short time frame and provide accurate information. It's going to reflect fully on them if the information you provide is inaccurate and they publish it. If you're on a media release, so normally a media release, and we'll go through the structure of that shortly, but if you're developing a media release, normally you will have contact details for someone that they can reach out to find further information. If that contact is you or whoever that contact is, make sure that they're extremely responsive if somebody does try to contact them. So imagine you send out a media release, you've got your name listed as the major contact. It's really crucial that if a journalist then contacts you because they want a little bit more info in order to publish a story, that you're answering them immediately. So keep that in mind. Invite them to see your product or service or experience what it is that you offer, obviously when that's appropriate, and make sure that everyone in your organization is aware that that person is coming. But it can be really helpful for a journalist to have a unique experience or to experience an amazing service, can really make a difference, and it can make it easy for them to be able to publish a story. The other important part, I think, in terms of building media relations is to don't forget about local media. So when we talk about television and radio and newspapers, you probably think of the big publications like the West Australian or Channel 9, Channel 7, those kind of things. But don't forget the smaller guys. Really make an effort to get to know local media. So your community newspaper type groups and just smaller shire sort of publications and that kind of thing, because the staff or the editors at those publications are always hungry for news. So if you've got information that's relevant to their local area, it will quite often get picked up and you'll get some good coverage there. The other information or the other way to ensure you've got those strong media relations is to make regular contact. So once you've established the relationship, make sure that you do keep in contact, whether that is through providing information or whether it's through LinkedIn or other social media channels, but keep in the loop with them and really build that relationship. Obviously not too often to annoy them. You don't want to get to that sort of space where you're hassling people that are busy, but really, yeah, develop the relationship and then maintain it like you would any business relationship. And keep in mind, what we're talking about here is gaining publicity essentially through good media relations. Publicity is just a tactic, whereas your public relations requires a really planned strategy, and it does take time. Okay, so we're looking again at that earned space being publicity. It's really all about spreading the word about your business through non-advertising channels and earning media. So through good media relations, you know who the media are, you know how to maintain a good relationship with them, as we just discussed, but you still need to keep in mind that they want newsworthy stories that are provided in a good time frame, so relevant to the time that the event or whatever it is happening. They have to be different or unique. They have to have a human interest element or provide eye-catching or emotive visuals. So something they can report on that really perks the interest of their readers, their viewers, their listeners, so their audience, essentially. You can communicate with them once you've got a story and you've got those relations in a number of ways. The predominant way is writing a media release. You may also produce newsletters that go out to a media database as well as your customer database or your trade database. In both cases, you'll have to have good photography to go with your story. You maybe even have video that adds to the content that you're speaking about, some kind of visual element. You can also, once you've got that together, you can use online news centers to distribute the stories. So you can use social media, making sure that you share, tag, use hashtags and whatnot as well. But to get to the media, the most common way and to generate publicity is by writing a media release. So we look at a media release in this sort of inverted pyramid format. So the most important is the lead. So the most newsworthy information, the who, what, where, when, has to go there, and that's really to hook people in. You want them to be basically not able to not read anymore. Then you've got the body, which is important details, perhaps the main argument or main information, some evidence and quotes to back up what you're saying. So if you're saying that you're about to launch the best event of all time, then back that up with a quote of someone saying. It could be, someone in the local community, it could be a government organization, it could just be you as the CEO of your company saying, we've never released an event like this, and, as said by John Smith or whoever that might be. So a quote backing up the information that you've said has a lot of weight and is really important. Then you've got the tail, which is just extra information, maybe a bit of company background, some further details and any extra content there, plus your contact details. And that's where I said just a minute ago, whoever is the contact at that particular point absolutely has to be available should any media then pick up the phone or shoot them an email to ask more. So a media release written in this way has to be about anything that could be classified as news. So journalists may take this media release if they find it interesting and write an article about it, which is really the end goal, or produce content about it. It doesn't have to be a written article. So depending on the journalist and the publication, sometimes they'll publish just what they read and add their own spin on it and fact check later. So you might have seen on social media, a lot of the time it's the public correcting journalists, and it happens because the news world is so fast paced. They'd rather be first to publish something, even if it's slightly inaccurate, than waste time checking facts and have another news outlet publish it first. So if you've got something newsworthy and someone picks it up, you just have to be careful that you've provided enough information in case they don't contact you for more information and purely publish what you've written. But if they do pick it up, it could be amazing promotion for your business, and it would be free, obviously, which is absolutely huge. So let's say it's a newspaper or magazine publication. They will also have a website and social media channels. So there's a good chance that your story will be covered in more than just print. So you get free marketing through the media avenue that publishes it. Via the website, you'll get a back link to your website, or your name will be searched. That will result in increased traffic to your website. So it can be a really great way to build your brand and get credibility within the industry amongst industry peers and with consumers. The links that and the mentions to your business not only are they great for generating traffic to your site, but they're really good for SEO, or search engine optimization. So when someone searches your name, often these articles will come up. So it's great for SEO as well. You just have to keep in mind that it is a really competitive space. So you have to make sure that your media release is the one that grabs the attention of journalists. And you have to do it through having truly newsworthy content that's written well, that's interesting and has that hook so that they do keep reading. So keep in mind that inverted pyramid format. All right, so you've got something interesting to say, you've written your media release, now you have to get it out. So I did touch on this a little bit earlier, but to get good reach with your media releases, you absolutely have to have this excellent database of media that's specific to what you're writing about. You have to have those right contacts to get the exposure that you're chasing, and it does take time, but as a starting point, you could definitely look at building a database of local newspapers, as I mentioned, local broadcasters, so TV and radio if it's relevant to your business, industry specific publications. So think about, are you a member of any particular organization that is industry specific? They quite often have newsletters going out to consumers, or Facebook pages with followers. So keep those in mind because they can really give you a lot of reach as well. You might be a member of your local Chamber of Commerce who also produce a newsletter. So contact them. Really any membership organisation that you're a part of. So it could be a national organisation, it could be state, or it could be a local or regional sort of level. But including obviously all of those areas is really important. You can get even greater distribution if you look at distributing through a media agency. There are agencies such as the Australian Associated Press, so AAP, and there's other industry specific media agencies that you pay a fee and they distribute to their database of contacts, which is obviously journalists. The information's a lot more trusted because it's coming from a media agency that the journalists would subscribe to. So you have to make sure that the release is addressed to the right person, as I said, otherwise they might never receive it. So if you're not sure, mark it for the attention of the person's title. So it could be food editor if it's food and beverage, or travel editor, whatever that might be. Email distribution is absolutely fine. It's very widely accepted, but where possible, make sure that you've got your media release in the body of an email rather than adding it as an attachment. Just one less step, that hopefully there's something within that content that catches their eyes. But in saying that, use your media relations and the information that you've gained through that research process to know how the specific outlet likes to receive media releases. Make a note of that and send it to them that way. It would most likely be via email though, but it is good to check and know, and even follow up with a phone call. But definitely send it with high-res images because it's really important to tell the story and the information that they need. So other organisations might be able to assist in publicity if they receive your releases, like those industry groups. So definitely don't forget them. And they may have good media relations as well. If you are sending it to a lot of people, make sure that you use the BCC function on your email. So don't send it to a long list of journalists that appear on each recipient's mail. It's very, very bad practice, and that's something that will get them offside pretty much straight away. Also keep in mind that you might need to tailor your release to each audience. So what will be relevant for your local newspaper, for example, might have a local spin on it and talk about the community and how good this product or service is for the community. But then if you're looking at a big newspaper, so the West Australian, for example, you might put a different spin on it. There could be trade publications that has a different spin again. So you might even need 2 or 3 versions of that same media release. And that's okay to do that, obviously. Definitely use your subject line in an email to attract the journalist's attention. Essentially, what you would do here is have your email subject line to be the headline of the story. So whatever the headline of your story is, match that to the subject line. Don't just say media release from your company or something like that. You want that to be part of what perks their interest. All right, so going back to the PASO model, publicity is what we've been talking about. And when it comes to media releases and coverage in publications, it's just about the earned media space, whereas public relations is about all media. So PR literally fits within each element of the PASO model, and it has to be incorporated into your entire marketing strategy. So have a think back and have a look back at this PASO model again, have a think about all elements of that. We're going to look at how you can incorporate it into your marketing strategy. So we'll talk about influencers now, who sit in that shared and the paid space. All right, so you might know the term social influencers. It really isn't anything new. They've been around in various forms forever. But today, the term influencers refers to people who possess significant credibility or considerable reach within a target audience, and largely revolves around the internet. So influencer marketing is a highly popular and effective form of marketing. It can be really cost effective and it can generate some really positive PR. So influencers have the power to affect actual purchasing decisions of others because of their authority. It could be because of their knowledge. It could be their position within an organization or the relationship that they have with their specific audience. And that could be because they have a following in a really distinct niche, and it's a niche that they actively engage with as well. So the size of the following really depends on the size of their topic or the niche. So it can include topic experts, it could be thought leaders, it could be brand advocates, they could be influencers in a blogging space, or it could be YouTube, podcasters, or generally speaking, the first sort of thought that comes to mind is social media. So they could also be celebrities or journalists, so they even academics, professional advisors. So they're essentially just people that have an above average influence on their specific audience. So in my opinion, social media has really devalued influencers because of the number of fakes or the wannabe influencers who will tell you that they have a huge following and they want something for nothing to be able to communicate your product or service to their following. And it can be quite difficult to see the fakes versus those real influencers. But we'll go through now in a few ways that you can really determine if they're right for you. So true influencer marketing should be directed by you, and that's a really good way to eliminate the fakes from the influencers that are going to actually generate really positive PR for you. So you should be approaching them. It shouldn't be the other way around. And the reason being is because you will have done your research to get to the point to know that they're the exact right person for you. So the influencer marketing is really basically leveraging your content marketing, so your website, your socials, your blogs, and there's huge benefits, but the main benefits are going to be increased traffic to your website, hopefully leads and new customers, as well as appearing in, so that's through your channels, but also appearing in their channels. So it should be a bit of both. The reason it works is because we generally trust friends, colleagues, or experts more than we trust advertising. So if we were to see an ad from a company in a publication, we know it's an ad. Whereas if you've got someone giving you a recommendation saying, hey, look at this product or service, I'm using it, it's amazing, we're more likely to believe that if it's done in the right way. Now, if you're involved in marketing or doing the marketing within your business, and you understand this side of it, you'll know that it's important to devote time and resources to really develop the right relationships with people that matter to your business. And the influencer does that as well. So they spend time and really create these authentic relationships with their audience. So you've got to choose the right influencer. Their audience absolutely has to match yours. So they've got authority within their audience. They've built these really strong relationships with them. You have to be talking to the same people. So think about your target market and exactly who it is that represents your ideal customer. That's the first part of research. The research that you need to do is to make sure that their audience perfectly matches yours. In terms of this criteria of determining if it's going to work for both of you, there are a few points that you need to consider and a few criteria. The first is the value to the influencer. So you need to firstly determine what is it that they want. So what's in it for the influencer? They're not going to work for free. It could be money. It could be for an experience. It could be a free product, whatever that might be. You need to determine that and make sure that that matches your budget and that suits your business. The next, and which I've touched on, is the audience demographics. So do they match your specific target market? Going back a step, do you know your target market? Do you know exactly who it is that represents your ideal customer? So quite often I speak to small businesses and they say, well, everyone's our market because we want everybody to buy our product or service. That's absolutely fine. And of course, no matter who's walking through your door, you're not going to say no to them, but you need to know who your ideal customer is. So your actual target, who are those customers that represent the highest return for you in terms of, purchasing, who are suited to your product or service. So in terms of usability, functionality, what it is that you're offering, and who are easiest to get to. If you match those criteria, you can really determine if they suit your target market. There's a lot of other research that you need to do. And we do have full webinars on strategic marketing and determining your target audience, because I think that's a really key element. So maybe keep an eye out for those if you're not sure. But then looking at their target audience, and you can do that through research, through going back on past posts if they're a social media influencer, or reading blogs, and think about who they're talking to. In their conversation, look at the people that are following them, look at the type of conversation that's going on in this space, and you'll really be able to determine who their target audience is and make sure that that is perfectly aligned with yours. Reach, or the size of their audience, is absolutely not enough in its own right to determine that it's going to be a quality relationship. So and these are when we talk about the fakes or the wannabes potentially, a lot of the time they'll come through to you and say, we've got a following of over 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, whatever they think is substantial. They'll tell you the size of their reach, but that's just not enough. You have to look at the engagement that they have with their audience. So look at their past posts, have a look at likes, have a look at comments, have a look at shares, have a look if there's true and genuine conversation going on there. So are they actually engaged with people? Is there two-way conversation as well, not just people making comments? You really want to see that influencer is going back and forth with people. If they are, you know that they've got obviously, hopefully building good relationships with their audience. And like I said, you're looking out for that genuine conversation. Likes by itself is not as meaningful. Also have a look at the quality of their writing style, the quality of their photography. Does how they pitch things, how they take photos, how they speak match your target market as well? So is it perfectly aligned with your audience and how you would talk about your product or service? Because keep in mind, they are going to be creating content. They're going to be posting about your product or service. If you don't like, or it doesn't align with your business, how they talk, it's not going to suit you for them to talk about your business in that way. The other thing I would look at is have a look at their connection to other influencers. So do they engage with other influencers? Are they respected and known in the industry? Have a look at things like Google searches. You look for people on LinkedIn and see what content. Do your research is basically the key thing. It is an absolutely amazing form of PR if it can be used right, but that's the key thing. It has to work for both you and for them. So that first point that I said, there has to be value to the influencer. What do they want? What do you want? Make sure that it's aligned, and make sure that it is a key part of your marketing strategy as well. All right, so how else could we generate good PR? Well, your customers are an amazing way to generate good PR. But to get good PR from customers and to get valuable PR from customers, you have to engage with them. So 88% of people are influenced by reviews and online comments. So this is the shared media space. So have a think about that and think about the different review platforms that they are. Do you know what people are saying about you online? And are you part of the conversation that's going on? So a lot of businesses say, I'm not on social, or I don't have Google reviews. whether you think you're on it or you're not, you probably are. So people can create your business listings on Google, on TripAdvisor, on, a range of different platforms where they can review you. So you need to make sure that if you're being talked about, which chances are you know what's being said and you're part of that conversation, whether it be positive or negative. So if there's a complaint, obviously that's an open forum to address that. And on the flip side, if it's someone giving you some positive feedback, you want to be there to say thank you and give you that next opportunity to continue the opportunity to engage with your customers after they've left your store or your office or after they've transacted, essentially. You have to keep in mind that social pressure or social media essentially can tarnish your branding as quickly as you grow up. So those fingertips are always on the move. So that's a major factor of PR. You have to be there to join that conversation. So thinking about whether you're waiting in line, you might be slightly disgruntled about, some service that you're receiving, or the consumers will quickly let friends know on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, however they choose. So they're going to let them know whether they've enjoyed something or not. If you're, depending on your industry, there's other areas that people can review you. So I've mentioned Google, there's TripAdvisor, there's Facebook reviews, there's reviews on third-party platforms like Urban Spoon, or, there's a range of different platforms. So make sure that you do your research to know all of those platforms. And keep in mind also that no business is perfect. So virtually everyone in any industry will have to deal with customer complaints at some point. And I do work with a number of small businesses who say we never get complaints, and it is a reality, unfortunately, particularly with social media. People are, like we said right at the beginning, consumers are a lot more empowered and there's not much accountability because they're not in front of your face making a complaint. It could be, really simple things as well. So, or it could be an extremely serious service complaint. Sometimes if people try to contact you directly to make a complaint or give you feedback and they're not getting any response, they will then turn to social media. So that could be another area that you need to look at. Look at your customer service journey, look at the process, and see that you have the right complaint handling tactics in place so that it doesn't get to a point of social media. Just to expand on that, in terms of complaint handling, it is really important that you handle complaints well, but there are reasons that small businesses don't. The main reason is that they're too busy. So the complaint could have could have arisen as a result of being too busy, but then on the flip side of that, you could be too busy to respond to it, which escalates things. One thing from a complaint handling perspective is people want to be heard. Being defensive or trying too quickly to come up with a solution is very dangerous as well. As small business owners, we are quite emotionally tied to our product or service. So really that defensiveness can come into it because you believe in your product or service. And defensive can be as open as saying, no, that didn't happen, or I don't believe that happened, not in my product or service. Or it could be that you just too quickly try to come up with a solution. So people want you to take that time to hear them, to then work through a process of resolving that complaint. The other thing that can let companies down in terms of complaint handling is that staff may not be trained well in complaint handling. They could be intimidated by a lack of training. So if someone complains, they're not really sure what to do. They don't have a process in place. Therefore, they don't handle the complaint well. Or they could be unsure of their empowerment. So they might be unsure at what stage they can offer a solution to a problem versus what stage they need to escalate that to someone more senior. But essentially it comes down to procedures or a breakdown in procedures. Make sure that you have a clear complaint handling procedure and that all staff are trained well to know what that procedure is. Those reasons can have such serious impacts on your shared media and result in some really negative PR. So I've seen it with a company that I've worked with before. And this one, the experience that I saw here was very, very simple. Someone went into a restaurant, they purchased a dish, they weren't satisfied with it, but they didn't say a single thing on the day. They did take photos of it, however, and put it on social media. for whatever reason, it went viral, and it went viral quickly to the point that that the news stations of Perth Now and those kind of sites picked up on it, and everyone, it even made it to the actual Channel 7 or Channel 9 news. So simple situation, it could have been handled well in terms of are your staff trained in customer service to speak to someone that's there having a dish? It's generally quite easy to tell whether people are satisfied or unsatisfied, or whether they're having a good time or not having a good time, enjoying what the product or service is that you're offering them. So make sure from a customer service perspective that you're continually looking out for signs that people may not be happy. Also that when it went online, it wasn't handled well from a company perspective. So it was, again, a bit of defensiveness in there, and there, you know, it was just a communication thing, but it did escalate very, very quickly. So that's what you're trying to avoid. And through good customer service, good complaint handling, you can generally avoid these situations. So keep in mind that positive PR from customers is absolutely crucial. There's ways you can encourage it, and there's ways that you can avoid any negative PR. So how can you bring positive PR from your customers? Well, there's really three elements to engaging with them, but essentially the number one thing is that you do have to engage with them. So engage with them while they're there, engage them while they're not there, but make sure that you are supporting them as well. So the first element of engaging with them is to listen. So there's free tools for social media monitoring, so where you can track mentions, you can track your competitors or events. You can also just look at your own reviews, obviously, and make sure that you are getting notifications as soon as there is a Google review or a Facebook review, so that there's no time lag between that review coming in and you seeing it. There's also social media monitoring specialists, there's web monitoring tools, web analytics tools, there's brand and reputation tools. So there's a number of different ways online that you can listen and spot trends as well. So make sure that you're looking at that data, maybe incorporate it into your own reporting in terms of how many reviews you got, were they positive, negative, just so that you can keep a track on how you're going. Obviously, Google reviews, Facebook reviews, those kind of things are absolutely crucial. Another way that you can listen about your brand is to set up a Google alert. Now, with a Google alert, you do this in your Google, under your Google login, and basically you can get an alert anytime keywords are mentioned on the web. So it could be that you put your own brand in there or your competitor's brand. So anytime not a new news article, anytime any content is published on the web with those key search terms in it, Google will send you an alert. So it's a really good way to keep on top of what could be happening or being said about your business away from your own channels. All these alerts that we talk about, the notifications that we talk about in terms of reviews, that's only when someone's actively reviewing on your own channels. If they're writing a blog or doing something away from your website, then you run the risk of not knowing about it. So make sure those Google alerts are set up, because they're free and a very good tool to use as well. The next element of engaging with your customers is to talk. So talk with pictures, talk with media releases, engage with your customers on social media. When they're commenting, you be there to join the conversation. Obviously, I've mentioned engaging with influencers. There could be blogs, there could be communities about your product or service that you can engage with. And other social networks. So think about, even on Facebook, the various communities that you could potentially be a part of, obviously being relevant to your product or service. Also, like I said, with when we were just talking about complaint handling, talk to your customers when they're physically with you, and make sure you continue that conversation online. So you need to be engaging with them in front of you and then continuing it online. But to do that, you have to support them in terms of directing them to channels where they can talk. So do you have promotion of your social media channels in your location? So whether it's a storefront or an office or a venue, make sure that you communicate where people can engage with you, whether they can tag you, they can use your hashtag, whatever that might be. Also think about online, where you can do that on your website, on your email footers, however you can communicate to people, hey, these are our social channels. If you want to engage with us, we're here. Also think about Wi-Fi connectivity in your business. I'm not sure if you do provide it, but obviously it's a great way to get people to engage with you more, particularly if you're, if you're a organisation that appeals to international visitors to Western Australia. Obviously, we don't have international visitors at the moment, but think about when you're traveling, one thing that you always look for is somewhere that's got Wi-Fi connectivity. So most people that are Australian will have data plans and that kind of thing, but that Wi-Fi connectivity can be really important for your international market if you have an international market. So I mentioned advertising, your social media channels, and just really promoting how and where people can leave feedback. So make sure that you're really easy for them to find. That will then, through this support, that'll give you platforms to listen, which then gives you ways to talk. So it's a cycle. You have to be there to listen. You have to then talk, but you have to support so that they can talk, so that you can listen and you can talk back. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, even if you've done everything right, a crisis may strike. So to get through that the most effective way, there's a few things that you need to consider. So first of all, have a plan. So have a plan before a crisis strikes. Even if you don't think you are in a business or an industry where there may be a crisis, one day you could be unpleasantly surprised and there is a crisis. So if you've got a plan before that happens, it will make your job and the PR fallout a lot lesser. In that plan, you should identify a spokesperson, make sure that your staff and within your organisation, everyone knows in the event of a crisis, nobody talks except the one spokesperson, so that the message to the media and to consumers and to even to your stakeholders is really clear and it's coming from one source. If you are then contacted and you're the spokesperson, make sure that you're providing information very timely so that people are getting that information quickly, so there's no room for speculation. That's a really key thing. If you don't get information out quickly, other people will get information out based on what they think they know, whereas you're obviously closest to a situation if the crisis is happening within your business. Now, this could be anything. So, we're talking about obviously COVID at the moment. There could be, someone gets COVID through a community transition while they're at your business, and that could potentially cause a crisis for you in terms of, bad PR, people don't want to go there, whatever that might be. Or it could be something bigger. It could be an accident, an incident. It could be absolutely anything. With this process, so I've mentioned be timely, be honest as well. So don't try and make up little stories or cover-ups, because there's always somebody that knows. Be open, be transparent. Also make sure that you keep your employees and stakeholders informed. So don't forget employees. If there's a crisis and they're away from the workplace, it's really important that they are aware of what's going on. Again, it eliminates any need for speculation. It also makes them feel a bit more secure and involved in the process. Your stakeholders are equally important. So there's key people involved in your business that absolutely need to know what's going on. Also think about updating early and often to customers and, I've mentioned stakeholders, but suppliers. Make sure that they know as well. When I say update early and often, don't let those news stories come out where you haven't provided the content for what's happened. Don't forget traditional media if it's appropriate, and social media. So keep that in mind, that you have to cover all bases. So there's a few examples in the media recently. There's Mojos in Fremantle that have had some really negative PR, and I think they've done it really well in terms of how they've responded. They've been very open to the crisis situation on social media and very heartfelt feedback. They've told their customers, their stakeholders exactly what they're doing about the situation. I won't go into the situation because I don't know about it, but have a look at Mojos in Fremantle if you want to look at some good examples of crisis management. They've updated regularly, they've been open and honest, and they've told consumers what they're doing about the situation and the steps that they're taking, so that reassurance. So keep that in mind. I had another crisis situation within my own business. I have another tourism business, and unfortunately there was a crisis situation that wasn't actually related to our business. So the business is an aviation business. there was an aircraft accident. It wasn't our aircraft, it was nothing to do with us, but there was a very, the media had a very strong knowledge of our business, and there was confusion as to whether it was us or not. I immediately contacted the media the minute I heard about the accident, and I told them that it wasn't us. So I provided them with information. So when we say update early and often, even if it's not your situation and it has the potential to reflect poorly on you, then you might have to update. So that was really important, that I contacted the media, who I had really good relationships with and relations with, and said, we're aware of this incident. This is what we know in terms of factual information. So no speculation from me. This wasn't our business. If you want any more information, you can contact us, but we don't know anything. So the first thing that was published was that it wasn't us, essentially, which is really important for PR, because the media may have just assumed it was us and ran with the stories that said it was, rather than checking with us. So it goes back to the media wanting to publish first and ask questions later. So sometimes you do have to update the media on a crisis situation that isn't yours alone, if that makes sense, hopefully. So keep that in mind. Hopefully crisis doesn't happen within your organisation, but if you've planned for it, everyone knows exactly what to do in the case, then it's going to have a much better impact on PR and keep PR a lot less negative for you. All right, so we've just about come to the end of the webinar. So I hope it's really given you a greater understanding of PR from the paid, the earned, the shared, and the owned elements. So keep in mind that peso. And I hope that you're a lot more confident to be able to build your brand across all of these areas. But some top tips before we go to build your brand are always factor in that peso model. So don't leave out any component. Peso absolutely matters. And just think about what your strategy is in each of those elements and what you're doing in each of those elements, or those media elements, I should say. Media releases are really important. So I would encourage you to craft compelling stories on new or interesting things that happen in your business. Aim for a target of, say, at least a few per year. Think about anything that's happening. It could be events that are coming up. It could be a new product or service that you're launching. Anything that's unique, that's interesting, that's new, can make for a media story. Absolutely promote your expertise as well, your knowledge or that of the others in your business. So in your earned and your shared media, make it personal, tell your story to get people to really have some kind of connection with you, or the story behind your brand even. That allows people to really connect with you more. If people think there's a person or there is a personality behind a brand, then when they're talking to you on that social space, they're going to feel more connected, particularly if they're your target audience, because your values should match their values, if that makes sense. For cheap and effective PR, look at maybe sponsorships, participating in charitable or community events that are relevant to your industry or relevant to your business. The key thing here is to make sure that their audience matches yours. So if you're looking at sponsoring, let's say, a local football club, other people that are going to be at that football club that are seeing your name on the jerseys or, your name in print at that location, are they your target audience? If they are, then it's a great way to get exposure from a PR perspective to your target market, but really consider that. Perfectly match your target audience to that of those organizations that you want to support from a sponsorship or a charity perspective, and it has some really great benefits there. Also reach out to influencers in your industry. So do that research that I mentioned. Reach out to people that you think are relevant. Start that conversation. Really get to know more about what it is that they do. So spend time researching them before you reach out. But when you're sure that they're perfect for you, don't forget to make contact with them. Google Alerts I've spoken about, but absolutely use them. It's free, it's fantastic, and just track what's being said about you online through that. They're set up in your Google account. You choose the keywords that Google reports on. Once they're set up, you just get that notification, and I think you set up the regularity of that notification, whether it's daily, weekly, whatever that might be. So anytime those keywords appear online, you're getting that notification. The top tip with Google Alerts is make sure that your keywords are specific. So make sure that you're not using really general keywords, because otherwise you're going to be getting millions of notifications that aren't relevant to you. So things like your brand name, if it's a unique set of words, or your competitors' names and that kind of thing, are sort of what we tend to go for here. All right, guys, that's it from me. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to stay online now to answer them. So please pop them into that Q&A functionality, and I'll keep an eye out for them. Just keep in mind, we've only just scratched the surface today. So if you want to know more, you can book a one-on-one appointment with me or any of the other advisors through this ASBAS program. But there's also a range of other webinars and workshops. So keep an eye out for those. I'd love to help you more. So if you do have any questions, like I said, shoot them through. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for joining me. Now, Ben has just asked a question. Any examples of crisis management PR tips where someone might be involved? We were an unknown victim in a scam in a negative PR that was under investigation by legal authorities who advised in writing not to go to print on your position. Okay, so just to understand that situation more, you were scammed in negative PR that was under investigation by legal authorities, and they've said not to go to writing. Now, if legally they've said not to go to writing, I would assume that is due to legal implications. So I would probably find out more about that. So I'm assuming that you've got this negative PR and you want to clear that up, and I think that you should be entitled to do that, but I would ask the legal reasons behind that. I personally haven't been involved in any scam type situations where I've received false negative PR, and not to the level of a legal perspective. I have, where people have posted fake reviews and that kind of thing, but not to the seriousness of what you're describing here. So I would suggest going through to the legal authorities that have said to you not to go to writing and ask the reasons for that. So it could affect your case later if you're seeking compensation or something like that. There may be a reason that they're suggesting not to, but definitely understand that reason. And when you understand the element of what the reason that they're saying no, then you could probably look at whether there's a time frame on that and at what stage you can then try and rectify the situation. But yeah, if you want to stay online and shoot back some questions on a one-on-one basis, then I'm happy to do that as well if you want to talk about it a little bit more. But hopefully that answers your seemingly difficult situation. Oh, historic example. Okay. Well, hopefully it's been resolved now, but that doesn't sound very good. All right. If you have any other questions, I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes, but thank you again. It's been great to see you this morning, and we'll talk soon. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day. See you later.